Ed Billings.
Jefi Moultrie, what's going on?
You know, the last podcast we did, I said it was number 50, but really this is number 50.
I know. We double counted, didn't we? I hate it when that happens.
I know, but now we get to celebrate twice.
I know. And hey, speaking of celebrating,
Yep.
I did that half marathon.
Ooh, tell me about it.
It was great. You know, set the goal to do it. Had a great time. But that kind of leads into our episode here, in that you know, prepping for something like that. You know, you set the date, boom, it's out there, it's looming.
Yeah.
And I got a little anxious. You know, it's like, am I going to be ready? I hadn't been doing a lot of running. I've done half marathons before, but I was coming from scratch in this round.
Yeah.
And Ryan, our coach, gave me a great program.
Good.
And
Ryan.
I know.
We love you, Ryan.
He's awesome. But it was a 10-week program, and every day was accounted for. And that routine took all the anxiety away. It just made it really, really fun. And in those 10 weeks, I only missed one assigned workout. So
amazing.
I followed it. And then what happened is, you know, you get that momentum going, right? So lean into the routine to take the anxiety down, which relates to what we want to talk about in our business, right?
Yeah, we really wanted to do an episode on the changing market, which it is, and we're going to talk about that a little bit, but more so what we as agents do when we feel out of control in our business and anxious. And we have had an incredible run with a fire hose of business. Right. That's Ollie in the background, by the way, if you can hear him yelling. But anyway, we've had a fire hose of business happening, and now this is changing a bit into a more normal climate of a market. And this is where people get worried. They get nervous about things. So we really want to talk about some spaces you can lean into to curb that anxiety and really stay the course, which is very much in alignment with you having a checkoff list for preparing for something you haven't done in a while. And how did you do? How did you make your goals?
Yeah, I came close. I mean, I really wanted to go hit a certain time, and I was a little bit over what I thought I could do. But the course was challenging. It started on a hill, and so that held me back. But now I got a mark, right? And what I loved about it is I was just celebrating like the start of the year and being in great shape and moving forward. So it was a lot of fun.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. All right. Well, should we zoom in a little bit?
Yeah, well, before that, I think let's just kind of make sure we've got the whole big picture there.
I think you're right.
Yeah,
so I always love to get right into.
She goes right into the deets. But as Jefi said, it is slower right now, and so a routine's going to help you keep on track. And the danger if you don't stick with your routine is that it's really easy to fill your day with those non-work related items. You know, we're realtors, right? So we could control our own schedule, and you can do a lot of, you know, C-level activity and not focus on maybe a little more of the challenging A activity. And I think the big one is if you don't pay attention to that routine, it's really, really easy to drift in this business.
Oh, and especially when you're not in as many escrows as you're normally in, or not showing as many properties as you normally do. Those routines that we do day in and day out, if those become less, then we tend to be like, oh, I could just work in the yard today, plant some trees, go for a walk in the middle of the day, which is all beautiful and fine as long as that's part of your plan. You shared a story about the Tour de France.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, as we zoom in on the details on this, I think this is a great one. So, Lance Armstrong, George Hincapie. I was listening years ago to Lance's podcast, and he was interviewing George Hincapie, and they were reminiscing about a race that they did when they were young cyclists, and it was one of the spring classics in Europe. So they're held right around now, you know, and Tour de Flanders. Paris-Roubaix, and you know they're really nasty races. They're cold, really challenging. They can be. And they were telling the story. They were standing at, they're at the starting line getting ready for the start. And it was just cold and rainy. And, they're standing there, and George was feeling really anxious, and he was just like, ugh. And he looked at Lance, and Lance said, I love weather like this. And he's like, what? And he goes, yeah, 95% of the guys here have already quit. And he's right, because they're like, oh, terrible day. I don't want to be here. They're already out. They've mentally checked out of the race.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the analogy in a challenging market when transactions are down. It's harder on lead gen because you're just getting, there's less people buying. So a lot of people are like, I'll just, go shopping today or, do something else. Right. So,
and I think because we love our community, we love our agent community, we want to make sure they're not quitting. We want to make sure they're all in, and we want to share some things that we have found work for us and our closest realtor friends. So can we start this with kind of the climate of your market, because your East Coast, North Carolina, very different than San Diego's normal kind of cyclical market.
Yeah, happy to do that. So in North Carolina, so East Coast market, we do tend to have the normal, pre-crazy market we've been in. Normal cycle was things kind of slow down at Thanksgiving. You have the holidays. Then people start talking about doing something for the spring. And the front end of the spring market, historically, I used to say started at Valentine's Day. So that's when everybody's doing their prep. And if you look at 2021 and then the first 3 quarters of 2022, that cycle just went away. It was more like what you have. It was just, constant. And so we got a little hooked on that. And now we've returned to that kind of natural cycle, combined with the fact that there's fewer buyers in the market. There's still segments that are real active, but it's not everybody rushing from all this pent up demand. So, so that's our natural cycle, and I'm seeing that a lot of people are doing prep for listings for spring.
Right. And what I felt between you and I, because we check in with each other and are accountable to each other for numbers, is that some anxiety came up because I was still working, because San Diego doesn't really have a shutdown time. And when I say still working, I mean, I had listings coming on and I had buyers out in the car and escrows going. And I remember looking at you one day and I could tell you're like, well, what the heck is going on here? And it's because you're back in the cyclical market that you're normally in, where you guys really ramp up in March and April, where we kind of just stay in that steady spot. So this is one of the things that comes up, and a lot of us don't really talk about, is there's this, death by comparison of what's happening with your friends and your cohorts and partners. And the bottom line is that if you do stick to the activities, those activities will bring business in due course and due time. It's just when you kind of go, oh, it's January and it's time to kick my feet up and I'm not going to call people or plan parties or do what I need to do, that's where we get off course. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh yeah, I totally agree with that. And that's where in this season it's been very helpful that I've had my discipline plan, kind of like my half marathon plan, to have all this lead generation activity. And we'll get into some of those numbers in a minute, but that's really helped because we're back to that traditional season.
Right. Yeah. That was one thing that after the team's, a seminar that we had with Buffini, I looked at my coach and said, all right, look, I'm tearing it all back to the basics. If I'm not making my numbers, we need to get me back on course. And we've really been working on that. And sometimes, just like your Lance story, it's easy for me to get a little sideways because, in general, and this is a very general number, you guys, and this is the end of January's numbers, but we're down about a third in sales volume. And what that does is that's a third less people I'm working with and a third less busy with the busy work, right?
Right.
And so it's easy to go, oh, I think I'm going to go sit in my jacuzzi.
Right.
And don't do that. Don't do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And our numbers are the same. Transaction volume, so number of sales is down about a third. And I think I bet that number's probably holding up nationally. So
pretty close.
I know I've always used a phrase, it comes kind of a joke around our house, activity begets activity.
Yeah.
And, it's got to be the right activity. But, I had this a couple of weeks ago where, it's, again, transaction, levels low. So I'm doing all my pop buys. I book a client lunch. So I, have a really, really good client lunch and go deep with that client, get a referral out of that. And then out of my other efforts, another referral pops up. And so I start working on a buyer opportunity that in a market I typically don't do as much work in. But it was really fun. It's like, hey, this is new, first time buyer. I'm getting busy with this. I'm having good client activity. And then you can feel the momentum, right? And so that's activity begets activity. I think that's a really important phrase that I've always tried.
That's a super good one. I just want to share a little something. I and we did an episode on this, like calling people is like hot needles in my eyeballs. And remember we were talking about that because I love to text, and usually when I call clients, they go, "Oh my God, are you okay?"
That's good.
Oh, what's going on? But Joe and I my business partner, Joe, and I made a commitment last Saturday to go in and spend 2 consecutive hours, no matter what, calling people, 0 texts. And every single call we had to ask for a referral. And we were right next to each other. And if we got a referral, we would stand up and high five each other. So it's so much fun to get in that momentum with somebody. So think about maybe somebody that you enjoy working with, that you could make a commitment to making those calls with them. Have fun with it. It doesn't have to be arduous. It could be incredibly fun to do.
I love that when you guys did it. And the thing that blew me away is you did it on a Saturday, which and as a guy who I call clients all the time, right? I've never dedicated a Saturday to doing that. Remember my reaction? And I was like, what?
You're like, what?
You guys,
right?
You're going to call on a Saturday? But better chance of reaching them. And how was the reaction? Yeah. What was the reaction like?
Well, it was super neat. Actually, people were like, oh my God, I can't believe you're calling me. You never call. And then of course I'm thinking, God, I never call. And then I had one client who called me back a few days later. He said, was I rude when you called? Like, you caught me so off guard with the call that I was in the middle of something and I don't feel like I gave you the time and attention that you needed. And I love this guy. He's an incredible client of mine. Yeah, that went really well. And then I had a guy who has been a client of mine forever. And I said, hey man, you haven't referred me any business in a really long time. He's like, yeah, I haven't. And then he gave me a referral. I'm actually showing them homes today after the podcast. But you don't ask. You don't do it. You don't get to reap the rewards. You're quitting at the starting line. So
you're quitting in the rain. So no, that's great. Well, I think it'd be good to maybe chat about how we mark our activities with each other too. That accountability partner piece. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you get a visual with Jefi. She's got her whiteboard. This is reminiscent of a past election. Oh, look at this. So Jefi,
Ross Pro have a board like this.
So describe what you got there. Go ahead. I'll let you do it.
Okay. So I put voice to voice. I have to do 100 or 800 this year. Notes 500. Face to face just over 300, and I need to talk to 200 agents. And then here on this one is my year to date. So you can see that big goose egg right there. This is face to face. Well. I'm having a client party this Saturday, so I'll be able to add some things in here. But Ed and I made sure that when we do our Wednesday chats, we talk about where we are so that we don't get too far off course. And that's another thing is sometimes people are super visual. I really like to see those things. I know I have a way to chart them on the computer and do things, but to have it in your face is a really, really cool thing. And it's nice to have those numbers. You have your three numbers, right?
Yeah.
800.
Yeah. So, my goal 800 voice to voice and face to face, and we've been on a blitz here. So I've got 115 of those done so far. So in the first
Wow.
6 weeks. So
Way to
we're
go.
we're hitting it hard. That's the good news. That the bad news is notes 10, and I need to do 600.
Perfect. You can do
So,
it. You can still do it.
and then my agent to agent 200, and I totally blew it today. I could have knocked out like 10 of those. There was a Zoom call from
Yeah.
our group from Peak, and there was like 12 agents on it. I could have knocked all those out, and I was out at a meeting and didn't get there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. You
so
can still do it.
I know I'll schedule
All
another one.
right.
I know.
Okay.
So
Good. Um, Preparing for these things. This is really important because, and this came up in a conversation that Ed and I were having about, some mornings I walk out the door at 5:45 for a really early workout, and for me, if I don't have my shoes by the front door, my water bottle, my keys, my purse, everything ready to go, it's an absolute shite show in my house because I'm tired. I don't get up that early. I don't like getting up that early.
Yeah.
So I need to have everything ready to go, and I think that absolutely translates to business. If you don't have a ton going on in regard to getting buyers in the car and opening escrows and listings and such, you need to have, and even if you do actually, but just you need to have a plan. And that plan needs to be on either a piece of paper or on your calendar, and your calendar needs to be your boss for that day to do those activities. It's setting yourself up for the win, right?
Yep.
Your notes are on your desk. Maybe they're even already, you already know who you're writing them to. The more prepared you are for those things, the better off you are going to be on staying on task. And you might find that something that used to take you 5 hours to get through might take you 3. Okay, well, you just won the day. Now go have some fun. Go plant that tree now, or go for that walk, or
Yep.
do whatever you want.
No, you're totally right. I mean, for me, if I know who the notes are that I'm going to send them to, who I'm calling for that day, just, so I'm not just hitting that cold. And then especially I've been doing this big pop by blitz. I printed out everybody in address format, just the labels for the people I was going to visit. And then I could plan my route so that I knew where I was going and on what days. And then I texted them, but prior to say, hey, I'm going to be dropping something off, be on the lookout for it. So I made that commitment so that I couldn't slide.
Right, exactly. Just like my commitment to Joe to show up at 10 o'clock on Saturday. It is sometimes when you have a partner to commit to those things and you committed to your clients. That's a really great point, by the way.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to zoom in on before we wrap this baby up?
Yeah, I think the one more, an easy, we talked about this actually. We had a little retreat with our office and we were talking about techniques that work. And doing what we would call pop-up events are a great little tool. They don't take a lot of planning. It can be, hey, let's meet for coffee here at this time.
Right.
Anybody that comes by, I'll buy you a coffee. Or, hey, pop-up happy hour. It's a beautiful afternoon. Come on by, first round's on me. And it just goes out that day.
Yeah.
And so you've touched all the folks that you want to invite to that. So they're feeling loved. And then the people that actually show up, you get to go deep with them. Doesn't take a lot of planning. And it's a great little tool.
Joe's been trying to get me to do this for a while. And I think that I need to commit to you and to Joe to do this by the end of March. I will do one of those and I will tell you how it goes.
Perfect.
Because that's a fantastic idea.
Yeah, and I'm going to do one around the Final Four because basketball's so big here. So that's going to be my the one that I do. But I think to kind of wrap this up and put a bow on it. The bottom line, and this comes from Coach Ryan, so we want to give props where they're due, is it only takes one day to break a good habit.
Yeah.
And so you can be chugging along, and then you stop doing something, and then all of a sudden, you don't do that anymore, right? And so it's really good to just keep the momentum and know what you're doing, and if you're doing those things, that's going to lower that anxiety level.
Yeah. And for an example, I have a sticky note sitting in front of me that says make 16 calls a day, right? That's to make my goal. And sometimes that looks like 900 to me. But if I made one call that day, just one, I'm still on, I might not have made my goal, but I kept the habit.
That's right.
That's what you're saying, right?
Yeah, keep the habit. You might not feel like you can get a 10-mile run in, but you could get a 3-mile run in, right? And that's better than not doing any run at all.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, I always learn stuff from you. I appreciate you very much.
Same. You're crushing it, and we hope everybody's enjoying this. And just be cool.